welcome everyone to one of my favorite sessions, which is what's happening in PWS research. We're so happy to have you. I just wanted to make a note that there is a session later, which is the research roundup, which will cover what happened during the clinical scientific meeting. But this is a discussion about the general research that is happening with FPWR and IPWS. So I'm Melissa Demand. I'm with FPWR. I'm the Director of Community Engagement, and I'm also mom to Kemet with PWS, who is 11. We don't have everyone on FPWR's team up here today because they're with other groups. But joining us today is Theresa Strong, FPWR founder and Director of Research Programs, Lauren Schwartz, Behavior and Mental Health Programs, Marc Ridilla, Research Program Manager, Lisa Matesevac, Study Coordinator, and from the International Prader-Willi Syndrome Organization, Dr. Tony Holland, President. So let's take a quick minute for each of you to do a quick introduction and explain your role at FPWR and IPWSO.
So I'm Theresa Strong, and I am Director of Research Programs at FPWR. So I work with the excellent FPWR team members to coordinate many of the programs that we do. We have a strong grant program. We build resources for the community. And so I work with our team on all of those things.
Hi, I'm Lauren Schwartz. Most people know me as Lauren Schwartz Roth. And I'm a psychologist, and I've been involved with the foundation for many years, and I oversee the behavior and mental health programs, and I also mom to a 25-year-old with Prader-Willi syndrome. And yes, we have a great research team. We all work together.
Hi, Marc Ridilla. I'm from Syracuse, New York, and I've been a research program manager with the foundation for 3 years. My formal training is in biochemistry and biophysics because I love thinking about how biomolecules are created and how they move around and how they interact with each other. So I love to help with any research project that we support on the basic cell biology end of the spectrum, but the three major efforts that I oversee are the development of preclinical cell and animal models, exploring secretory deficits, finding common mechanisms underlying deficits in multiple different hormones so that maybe we can make those processes more efficient and help with more than one hormone at a time. And then finally, our therapeutic accelerator program where we group projects that have initial tests of new ideas for drugs. That's what I oversee.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Matesevac. I've been with the foundation since 2018, and my first role was as the Path for PWS study. Many of you probably in this room participated in. I'm currently the VNS for PWS Clinical Trial Study Coordinator, so helping facilitate families' enrollment in that study as well. And I also work closely with Jessica Bohanowicz on the Global PWS Registry and am one of the administrators for that. And the other role is mom to an 18-year-old with PWS.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tony Holland. I'm a psychiatrist by background, and I worked until retirement, at least, at the University of Cambridge in the UK. I've been president of the International Prader-Willi Syndrome Organization for the last 9 years, and I hand over to Nick Feiner, a colleague of mine, in, I think, 2 days' time. And I'm going to miss it very much. So I've been involved with that organization almost since its inception and have been at all the international conferences over the years. And I think it's been very exciting to see how things have developed and changed over that time.
Great, thank you all. We're happy to have you all here. This session is intended to spotlight some of the important work that's currently underway for treatments for PWS and the related disorder Schaaf-Yang syndrome. So let's jump in. So let's start with something that's on a lot of people's minds and they're wondering about, which is the approval of the first drug for hyperphagia, VYKAT, which has been approved in the US and is under review in Europe. So, and to be clear, none of you are speaking on behalf of Soleno, but I'd like to hear your perspectives on the journey to the approval for this new medication. Theresa, I'm going to start with you. The VICAT experience provides a good example of how the rare disease community can support the development of new treatments. Can you give us some background on how FPWR and the PWS community generally supported the drug approval?
Yeah, so I think one of the most important things that the PWS community did was engage with the FDA. So as the new therapies were being developed, it was clear to us that while the FDA was aware of Prader-Willi syndrome, they didn't really understand what it was like to live with Prader-Willi syndrome, what was impacting the person with PWS and their families. And so we engaged FPWR along with PWSA, have a long history of actually engaging and educating the FDA beginning in, I think our first meeting was in 2012, to really help them understand what it was that families wanted treated, to help them understand that hyperphagia couldn't be controlled just by giving someone salads, which is actually a question I got from an FDA regulator who was, really, to their credit, they really worked to try to understand what is it that is important to families. And we have done a series of surveys. Many of you get requests for surveys from us quite a bit. We're not just doing that to fill time. We use that information to educate the FDA. So we had a series of surveys. What do you want to see treated? So we could go to the FDA and say, not only is it important for my son, but our community thinks that treating hyperphagia is really important. It's not the obesity so much as the behaviors that come when you're hungry all the time and you're food seeking. We did surveys that asked, what level of risk are you willing to accept for a medication that could treat hyperphagia? And many others. And all of those things were, I think, important to the FDA so that they could feel like they really understand, because they have to look at a drug, they look at the potential benefits, they look at the risk, and then they decide if the benefits outweigh the risk. So where we come in as a community is informing that benefit risk. So.
Thank you. Lisa, can you discuss the role of the PATH program and the registry played?
Sure. So the Global PWS Registry formed in 2015. It has over 2,000 participants currently. It's a natural history study, and the PATH for PWS study was launched in 2018 as a sub-study to gather information on things like medical treatments, height and weight changes in food behaviors, et cetera. And so we had a wonderful response, over 650 families regularly contributing very important data. We ended up with an extremely rich data set, which served as a great natural history control. So when Soleno was looking for information, they were able to use that data set as a comparison to those that were in the Soleno trials. So the FDA accepted that natural history control data set, comparing individuals in the PATH study who were not in a clinical trial to the changes in hyperphagia behavior scores in the Soleno trial, and notably there was a significant difference. And so that data set was really transformative, and the families that contributed to the PATH study over those 4 years, what a tremendous contribution. I really want to thank you all for tolerating my repeated messages to complete those surveys. But in fact, you were truly making history at that time because your contributions had a direct and meaningful impact on this first ever drug approval for the FDA. So doing research from the comfort of your home is possible, and we also proved that a rich natural history data set is a good support to an FDA drug application.
Yes, thank you all for all of your participation. Well, we're all excited about VICAT, Theresa, but it's just the beginning, right? What are the other treatments that are coming down the line?
Well, we're just coming off the clinical and scientific conference the last couple of days, which was very exciting. And I think what impressed me was that it is new medications, it is new devices, it is new interventions that are non-medical, all of which are, addressing different symptoms of PWS. There are several ongoing clinical trials. I would encourage you to come to the clinical trial panel this afternoon to learn more about those and see if they might be suitable for your children. I think VICAD is a fantastic opportunity for our community, but we are likely to need more than one thing to address all of the issues that our children face. So I think this is the time to double down essentially and really, get therapies available to everyone in PWS, and the way to do that is to get the clinical trials done.
Wonderful. Well, let's maybe shift to Tony now to see. I know that families outside the U.S. are also interested in being able to get access to the drugs. So can you tell us a little bit about what the next steps for the U.K. and Europe are and how the PWS community can support that?
I think the first thing to say is there is incredible interest in this across the world, and particularly in Europe. And the trials, I think, not just this trial, but other trials now, are expanding and taking place particularly in Europe, but in other countries such as Australia. So I think people have become more aware about the importance of trials and how trials are necessary as a way of leading to new treatments. In terms of how we move to get approval outside of America, the company has already submitted an application to the European Medicines Agency, and the International Prader-Willi Syndrome Organization has been asked to submit evidence in support of that application. We held an information day, I think it was about 2 weeks after the announcement of the approval of VICAD, for our members, in order to try and help them think about what they might do that would support an application, not just to the EMA, but to other approval organizations across the world. So we're trying to encourage our membership, which are national associations, to develop the resources to do that. And we do have observer status as an organization with the European Medicines Agency. So I think there is quite a lot of work going on behind the scenes. And at IPSO, we have established a small working group that will sort of guide us through this whole process. Given that this is the first time this has happened for so many years, we need to learn more about how we best handle this in the hope that other treatments will come through as well.
Wonderful. Well, several years ago, FPWR established the Therapeutic Accelerator Program, or TAP, to identify and advance promising drug candidates and compounds with the potential of finding and becoming effective treatments. So Marc, can you tell us a little bit about this program and some of its successes to date?
Yeah, so Therapeutic Accelerator Program, about maybe half of the research that we support is really making measurements to define what PWS is, what's going on at the molecular level, at the cellular level, in an organ, in a human. And that's never going to stop because technology gets better and there's always more measurements that we'll be able to make. But why do we do this? It's because we're hopeful that researchers will see this data and find opportunities for new drugs. We find new pathways, new proteins involved, and there's either existing drugs or the potential to identify new drugs that affect those. And it has been really exciting that in the recent past, maybe within the past 3 years, that the amount of researchers with ideas for new therapeutic interventions has just increased. And we wanted to make sure that these get a chance to be tested and tested in the right way. So we have a lot of expertise ourselves, and we have a lot of expertise in our network. And so when we find these proposals that kind of have the first test, whether it's in a cell or a mouse, to just see if the drug can affect the pathway that it's supposed to and potentially offer a benefit to Prader-Willi syndrome, we flag that, give it extra attention, And we check on the measurements that they're using to determine if the drug is effective and make sure that these are the right ways to approach the experiments, because these kinds of projects can be pivotal in shaping the future of research. It could shift the field. More people would be interested in doing this particular thing. Conversely, if it's done wrong, then it has the potential to discourage people from developing therapeutics targeting that pathway, and we don't want that to happen if it isn't truly like a no-go decision. So we give these projects extra attention to ensure that the work is done in the most conclusive way, and that it'll be successful, and we can come to a quick decision about whether to rebalance our portfolio and put more effort into supporting these kinds of projects. And I think maybe the most encouraging thing, in addition to just that the number is growing rapidly, more researchers are coming up with these ideas for new drugs, is that the drugs have targeted all of the major clinical symptoms of Prader-Willi syndrome. We've got projects in the Therapeutic Accelerator program that target hyperphagia, of course, but also sleepiness, inflammation, systemic inflammation, neuroinflammation, metabolic syndrome, anxiousness. So it's really great to see researchers coming up with these ideas that have the potential benefits.
Great. Given our limited resources, it's just as valuable to identify treatments that shouldn't move forward. So when a compound shows signs of not being effective, how do we evaluate and decide it's time to move on?
Yeah, consistent with what I just said, we think that about 30% of the projects that we flagged into the Therapeutic Accelerator program have reached a point where further support from us in the near future wouldn't be of much benefit, because maybe the technology just isn't there to determine if these drugs are effective or for them to get to the right place in your body. And I wouldn't give up on really any of them, because we always believe that kind of other research will eventually improve the compounds. But with the limited funds that we have and needing to kind of focus on the projects with the highest potential, it's just important that we ensure that the results be as conclusive as possible, done the right way. And so that's what we're seeking when we use our network of expertise to help to design these projects.
Great, thank you. As we know, individuals with PWS typically experience intellectual disabilities. For some, these may be mild, but they can be a considerable challenge for others. In other conditions like Down syndrome and Fragile X, researchers are making progress in understanding the underlying causes of intellectual disability and are testing drugs aimed at improving cognitive function. Even small gains in IQ, like 5 to 10 points, might make a meaningful difference for people in PWS. Lauren, can you talk about some of the work FPWR is doing to advance research aimed at improving cognition in PWS?
Yes. Well, we've started this year to kind of work on a project or initiative to focus on this area. And we have a small working group within our organization. And we're starting out by reviewing the literature, especially in other areas that have made advances in cognition and treatments, and also trying to really hone down on what are the challenges that our kids struggle with in terms of intellectual disability and cognition. What are the best ways of measuring those challenges, and what are the areas that we might be able to see progress with a treatment, either a medication treatment or a non-medication intervention. And we're also doing interviews with key opinion leaders who work in the area of cognition and intellectual disability, both in PWS and in other arenas. And we're gathering that information to put together to come up with a specific sort of plan. And our hope is that we will put together a working group of experts and people from our team and develop some very specific projects that we'll explore in the next few years.
Well, that's exciting. Thank you for sharing that. Tony, I'm going to turn to you. So Cambridge University, where you've spent your career, has outstanding brain imaging technologies. How are you and your colleagues using this technology to better understand cognitive and mental health issues in PWS?
I think we've been involved in research in Prader-Willi syndrome over many years, and I think what's happened over time is we've sort of begun to focus down more on the issues of can we understand the fundamental problems that arise in the brain, if you like, and why it is that someone with Prader-Willi syndrome can't easily control their eating, or why they have emotional outbursts and so on. It's come together with a development at the university in the field of neuroscience. And we have very powerful neuroimaging group at the university. And then we were very fortunate in that someone called Stephanie Brown came and joined our group, and she is really very good, expert in neuroimaging. So I think so we sort of, in a sense, decided to choose neuroscience and neuroimaging as the focus of our group. I think the other thing about it is that technology is improving massively, and the ways that you can now interrogate the brain, you could never have conceived of even 10 years ago in some cases. So I think we're now at a stage where we can answer questions that are quite fundamental to understanding the needs of people with Prader-Willi syndrome and advancing treatments. So I think that's very exciting. And the final point I sort of like to make in terms of Cambridge and what we have to offer is we have a very strong group that looks at obesity and those metabolic sorts of issues. So there we have facilities that allow us to do very detailed observational studies about people's eating behavior, for example. So what we can do is bring together these observational studies, measures of various hormones, and brain scanning. And that, I think, is a very powerful combination. So you don't want just brain scanning by itself. You want to see how changes in the brain relate to changes in behavior. So I think it's a very exciting time, and we have the expertise to do that.
Oh yeah, that sounds very exciting. Thank you. Oftentimes when we're discussing treatments for PWS, we are looking at drugs that will help one or a handful of symptoms. Gene therapy, on the other hand, has the potential to be transformative as it can correct the underlying genetic causes of PWS. There's been a lot of excitement lately about CRISPR-based therapies, including a story recently about a baby cured from a rare metabolic disease using this technology. Theresa, can you tell us how gene therapy has advanced in the past several years, and where are we in respect to testing it in Prader-Willi syndrome?
So this is my gig. I enjoy gene therapy quite a bit, and it has just been amazing to see the progress in the last several years, not only with CRISPR technology, but with some of the gene delivery systems. So I'll give a quick shout out for basic science research with respect to CRISPR, because CRISPR is actually a system by which bacteria prevent infection by bacterial viruses or bacteriophage. So it was somebody studying how a bacteria stays alive that allowed us to now adapt that system to be editing the human genome. So, and the nice thing about the CRISPR approach is that it's kind of modular. So there are CRISPRs that do base pair editing, so single mutations in the genome, and there are CRISPRs that will turn genes on and turn genes off. So there's a lot of opportunity. The baby that was recently cured, well, I wouldn't say cured, the baby that was recently very much helped with CRISPR gene therapy, the advantage of, not the advantage, but the positive thing about that disorder for a CRISPR-based approach is that it was a metabolic disorder, and so it was important that the liver cells express the correct gene. Well, viruses and anything you put into blood just goes to the liver first, so it is the most accessible tissue to do gene therapy, and I think that's one of the reasons that it was so efficient and that you saw that such a positive impact. And the other thing, it was base pair editing, so it was just switching out one base pair, which is a little bit more efficient than some of the other CRISPR approaches. So it was kind of, the I don't want to say easy, but the easiest of all scenarios. But the fact that they could do it, that they could go from a baby being born to being diagnosed to having the CRISPR and, delivering it and having an important, huge impact within a year is just something that honestly I couldn't conceive of 10 years ago. For PWS, we have some challenges, right? So we're not going to the liver. We have to get up into the brain and into the hypothalamus, which is, a specific part of the brain. So that's a challenge. So, getting a CRISPR system or a gene delivery system up into the brain is a real challenge, but there's a lot of work going on because we're not the only neurodevelopmental disorder or brain disorder, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, that would benefit from being able to deliver to the brain. So we have the opportunity to benefit from all of the research that's going on in that way. And actually at the conference, and I'll go over this a little bit more in the research roundup, at the conference there were investigators also looking at using different approaches to target the brain. So, inject into the, if you're a mouse, inject into the blood and have specific targeting to the brain. So I think, for a CRISPR-based approach, we have that hurdle to overcome. That said, the field is moving so fast that I think there's, real hope for looking at a gene therapy for PWS. Now, will we be able to use that in an adult with PWS, and would it have an impact? We don't know yet. So there are many important questions. Would you have to do it in a newborn baby? Would you have to, would there be an impact in a child? Those are all things that we need to look at experimentally, and then, if it moves to human clinical trials. But a lot of work going on, a lot of excitement, a lot of different approaches to gene activation and gene therapy being explored for PWS.
That's wonderful. Well, as we know, as we just heard, gene therapy is a long-term goal, but let's now talk about some exciting short-term goals for treating PWS on the horizon. So FPWR is currently enrolling people with temper outbursts in a clinical trial called VNS for PWS. And this study is evaluating the effectiveness of wearing a VNS device for 4 hours a day on temper outbursts in Prader-Willi syndrome. Tony, you've done 2 small clinical trials with VNS. What first gave you the idea to test it, and what did you see?
Right. I'm a great believer in serendipity in research. I think charts, observations, but I remember thinking to myself, well, we know the vagus nerve, so it's very important in regulating appetite and so on. And also we know that vagus nerve stimulation has been used for many years to treat epilepsy. And I remember speaking to a colleague and saying, do we know what happens to people who are having vagus nerve stimulation for epilepsy? What happens to their weight if they happen to be overweight? And actually, Nick Feiner, who's taking over for me as a president, who's an endocrinologist, I happened to mention it to him, and he said his secretary had very bad epilepsy. She also happened to be quite overweight, and she had VNS, and she lost a lot of weight. So there's just that hint there. And then, of course, you go to the literature, and you find, well, yes, there are reports in the literature that if you have VNS for epilepsy, you may lose, some people at least, lose weight. But it was always put down to the fact that their epilepsy was better controlled and so on. Anyhow, we got a permission to have a trial, and we just had three people with Prader-Willi syndrome volunteered for the trial. And I must say, they were the most wonderful people. I mean, they're just extraordinary, because at that time it was a surgical procedure. They had an implanted stimulator. And I think for me, that particular trial was an illustration of how important it is to listen to the people who are taking part in it and their parents. Because after some months, and we knew that vagus nerve stimulation to treat epilepsy takes some months to have an effect. But after some time in the trial, I remember saying to one of the participants and to her mother, do you think it's doing any good? Because the data, and the trial was there to look at the eating at the time. And I remember them saying, no, it hasn't really helped the eating, but it's transformed the behavior. And the mother told a wonderful story, how they were in town one day, and fearfully she said to her daughter, look, I've got to get back home. We're running a bit late. can we have lunch at home rather than in town, knowing that that would normally have caused a temper outburst. But her daughter just said to her, yes, that's okay, Mum. And she said, the mother said to me, she said, when I picked myself up off the floor in the surprise that her daughter had said this, she said, I knew something was happening. And then we spoke to the mother of the son, the young boy who was taking part, and she said exactly the same thing to us. And we thought, we're onto something here that's quite remarkable. The third person who was part of the trial didn't have serious outbursts, so there was really no room for improvement. So then that allowed us to move on to the second small study, and by then there were these external devices, which are a little more complicated because you need a lot of cooperation, and it does take many months for it to have an effect. But ultimately, our aim was to recruit 6 people, but 5 people completed the trial, and out of that, 4 people did wonderfully well. And this time we were looking at their behavior. So I think it convinced us that there was something very striking going on. And I think the other point about it is that it's often very useful in research that if you see an apparent effect, that you have some sense of what the mechanism, why it is that it's working. And because vagus nerve stimulation is acting on what's called the autonomic nervous system. It's part of that system. And that's an important system for the control of emotional regulation. So I think what we were doing was sort of normalizing the autonomic nervous system. And people were therefore, with the people who are taking part, what they found is that they were able to remain calm when in the past, very quickly, they would have lost it. And of course, you get into a vicious circle there. So often it was, the parents would say to us, well, now we've got a bit of time, and if they're getting a bit upset, we can prompt them and say, look, you need to go and listen to your music or whatever it is. Whereas in the past, there would have been no time to do that. So I'm absolutely delighted and excited and can't wait for the results of the FPWR trial to see. And these were 2 very small studies, so they've got to be good, big studies to really demonstrate whether this is something that can be useful or not. But I'm hopeful and excited by it.
Yes, definitely. And Lisa, it's unusual for a nonprofit to conduct a clinical trial. The Venus for PWS is a big and expensive trial. Why did FPWR take it on versus a company?
Yes, that's a great question. So I think one of the things that FPWR does well is being very forward-thinking in advancing research, and the attitude is, to advance as much opportunity to learn about PWS as we can, and it serves as a direct driver of PWS research as well. This is a time-intensive and expensive study, but it was apparent that there aren't incentives for small companies who have devices to run clinical trials, and especially in a rare disease community. So who better to take that on than our own team? So, without those incentives for a company to do it, FPWR felt that this was a large unmet need. Significant behaviors can be very negatively impactful on family life. They create significant challenges, and if we can work to eliminate that as a challenge of living with PWS, we're ready to take that on. So we're very grateful for all the families that have enrolled thus far, but we hope to have that trial completed soon.
Well, so on that note, we are still currently enrolling. So how much longer do you think people can?
Yes, so we've had a robust response to enrollment, so thank you to everyone that has participated thus far. Currently, we are at about 70% of our enrollment. We hope to enroll 102, or that's the aim. We have about another dozen or so families that are in various stages of screening. We've had a number of clinical trial sites open recently and anticipate some more opening this summer. So we're hoping to have full enrollment by the end of the year, maybe sooner, depending on how things go. But if anybody is considering enrolling or has been thinking about it and wants to know more information, I do encourage you to reach out to us. We are here at the FPWR table. We're doing pre-screenings while we're here. We can also, of course, do them after the fact, but you're welcome to reach out to us directly, and we'll just talk to you about what that opportunity looks like, what study participation entails, and answer any questions that you have.
Perfect. Yes, go visit them at our FPWR table in the lobby. So diversity in clinical research and clinical trials is something that we strive for. FPWR is committed to increasing diversity in research. We have joined the Rare Disease Diversity Coalition, and we've also done research on clinical trials and diversity. So Lauren, can you tell us a little bit more about your findings regarding this research?
Yeah, so as Melissa mentioned, we, over the last year, joined the Rare Disease Diversity Coalition, which is a wonderful group, nonprofit group, that caters to a lot of different rare diseases and industry. And they have some working groups. So we joined the working group focused on clinical trials that's focused on ways to increase access and health equity in terms of research. And then we also joined a working group more focused on kind of the patient journey and patient advocacy. So we've learned a lot about how to increase advocacy and diversity in our research, and also been able to connect with a lot of different rare disease organizations who are doing similar work. So that's just been a wonderful, I think, opportunity for us. One of the projects that we did last year as part of the clinical trials consortium, the PWS Clinical Trials Consortium, is we wanted to look at, since there have been several PWS clinical trials that have been completed, how are they doing in terms of recruiting diverse families? So we looked at race and ethnicity rates in trials and compared it to the registry, the US Census, and other rare disease trials in the community. And we created a report, which is on our website, and we also created a list of recommendations on how to clinical trial sponsors on how to improve access and health equity in research and clinical trials. I would say that the PWS trials that have been done so far have done pretty well in terms of recruitment, but there's still definitely room for improvement. So hopefully that will continue to improve over the next few trials that get started.
I'll also mention that, another networking group that we support is the PWS CLIC, the PWS Clinical Investigation Collaborative. And one of, and it's about 30 different clinical sites across the US. And one of their objectives is also to improve health equity in PWS. We want, obviously, every person well, this is a North American group. Of course, we want everyone around the world, but we're focusing on North America with this group, to have access to information and sort of the best care that they can get. And so a goal of the CLIC, a stated goal that they're focused on is improving health equity and improving diversity in clinical care and research in PWS.
Great, thank you. Tony, can you tell us more about the importance of increasing research capacity in other countries?
I mean, I think fundamentally, you can say it doesn't matter where the research is done in the world, as long as it's good research, it's ethical research, because nowadays the results of those research are disseminated across the world and is readily available to everyone. I mean, that's perhaps a slightly glib response, but I think there are benefits to the countries where the research is done, in that what it does is it brings attention to Prader-Willi syndrome, and there are spin-offs for the people with Prader-Willi syndrome and their families in those countries in being part of that research. And of course, countries may have their particular expertise, which may not be present here, for example, but maybe in another country. I mean, research is truly a global endeavor. And there was recently a paper that looked at Prader-Willi research across the world. And I think there were about 5 countries, of which America was the lead, 5 countries that were engaged in really quite extensive amount of research. Of course, being a rare disease, one always worries about the fragility of research in the sense that it's often built around an individual who happens to be very interested in it and so on. And if they retire or whatever it is, that program of research may end. Or if there are changes in funding in any particular country, whether that will mean that research won't happen there. So I think it brings a resilience if we can spread research across the world, as well as improving lives for people with Prader-Willi syndrome by giving them the opportunity to engage in research.
Wonderful. So as a rare disease community, we do have to do our own research and develop our own resources in the community. And as an important theme this week is United in Hope. Lauren, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about how FPWR and PWS USA have worked together on some of the resources like the BOSS study, which is a great example of a collaboration with PWSA. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, one of the areas of research that I focus on is kind of more maybe clinical research and research that might create resources for the community. So a study that we funded a few years ago that was conducted by the wonderful PWS research group at Vanderbilt was that they were developing a social skills, online social skills program and on Zoom before it was cool. It was before the pandemic, to really target the specific social challenges that people with PWS have. So they developed this program and created a curriculum so that other people could take this program and implement it in their communities. And so we've shared this resource with PWSA and worked with them, and now they have that available and are able to conduct groups through their organization for people with Prader-Willi across the country.
Well, that's exciting. Well, as we can see, collaboration is really important for our community, whether that's collaboration with parents or with PWS clinicians. Theresa, can you tell us ways that the community can get more involved?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways. So FPWR twice a year has calls for grants, for grant applications from researchers around the world. And as part of the evaluation of those grants, we get scientific experts, of course, to review whether the science is very good. But we also ask parents or grandparents or people who love someone with PWS to serve as an advocate reviewer, because we both want the science to be excellent and we want it to be something that is important to the community. So we have, you can contact me, or we have a list of people who are interested in being advocate reviewers and adding their voice to what the community wants to see funded. And then, participating in clinical trials is great, but it's not for everyone. But there are other ways that you can contribute by, for example, joining the global PWS registry. That data, is really important. We have a lot of, the registry is pretty big. It's over 1,000, it's 2,000 people now. Which is great, but if a pharmaceutical company comes to us and says, hey, we're interested in learning about some characteristic of children aged 10 to 14, for example, then the numbers get a little bit smaller. So, and we also want to be representing the full spectrum of Prader-Willi syndrome through the registry. So having everybody participate in that is really great. And then on the other side, the CLIC, the PWS Clinical Investigation Collaborative, is developing a clinician-entered database where, so in the global PWS registry, it's parents that enter the data. In the CLIC registry, it's clinicians who are entering different data like the lab values and things like that. So if you see a physician at one of the CLIC sites and they ask you to participate in the CLIC registry, we'd love you to participate in that as well. And we have ways, if you would like to, with a unique identifier, to link your global PWS registry data with the clinician data, and that, of course, is the most powerful data set. So if the clinician's impression is in there, as well as your impression as a parent, we can really understand how different treatments or interventions are working. So that's a few ways.
Wonderful. So we are going to go to Q&A, but and we'll have some mics around the room. But quickly, Theresa, I just wanted to hear what is exciting you the most about the work that we're doing.
Well, I think I'm most excited just coming from the clinical and scientific conference at the level of enthusiasm, the number of young people. I mean, to Tony's point, this all is only going to, move forward if we have young investigators interested in PWS. So just seeing that. The other thing that I am very gratified to see is much of the research being done is kind of converging on a few major concepts, just showing a maturing of the field. I think Tony mentioned that as well. And of course, I love the gene therapy approaches, and it's really great to see those advancing. As I said, we have many approaches that are being tested experimentally, and I expect over the next few years, one of those will rise to the top as being able to move forward.
I'm really excited to see the VNS study be enrolled and completed and see the results of that. In addition to, there's a lot of different sort of device and neuromodulation interventions that are being investigated for PWS. We heard about some of them during the science meeting. Some of them being used for hyperphagia specifically. So I'm really interested to see how that field evolves and may actually produce some treatments for different PWS symptoms over the next few years.
My favorite part of this role is interacting with what I truly believe are the best scientists in the world, and they're not just the best for rare disease research or the best for Prader-Willi research, but these are like leaders, true leaders in what they do. And to watch that moment for each of them where they get hooked by the puzzle that is Prader-Willi syndrome, and then the effort level that comes from those labs increases because it's an irresistible puzzle to the right kind of scientists, the ones that we really want working on it. When they get hooked, it's exciting for us, it's exciting for them, and then it's been especially rewarding over the past 2 days as they've all come together for our clinical and scientific conference to see them make the connections with other researchers, start to work together, share their data, share their techniques so that they can make do what they do best, but then combine it all into one big story that explains Prader-Willi syndrome so that we can really find out if the new drugs that are going to be tested can benefit systemically.
I'd have to echo Lauren's comment about the VNS study. As the study coordinator, I've really been so gratified by the community's response to enrolling in this study. I think it speaks highly to what a significant unmet medical need we have. I think everybody thinks about PWS as hyperphagia being a large component, and it is, but in truth, behavior is one of the biggest challenges that limits people from participating fully in their communities and developing familial and peer relationships. So to be able to develop an opportunity for families to participate in a clinical trial, and moreover, make it such that we reduce burden by having the vast majority of it be through remote telehealth. I think that's a really transformative way to run a clinical trial, and I'm very excited to see, maybe other clinical trials follow FPWR's lead in the future.
I'd like to just first of all echo what Theresa was saying, that the exciting thing about the conference here has been the convergence of different lines of research that seem to be coming together, and particular themes are coming out. But I'd like to just emphasize something perhaps slightly different, and that is our experience in research in Cambridge, particularly with neuroimaging research, is, I don't quite know the right word, but the bravery of people with Prader-Willi syndrome in taking part. And we've established a really good relationship with many people, and they come and they may lie in a scanner for 2 hours or something. They have blood taken. They do all these tests. They answer yet more questions. Their mum and dad come along and they support them, and so on and so forth. But what is so nice is when it's all over, they're so proud as having taken part. And we usually give them a small gift like a mug or a hat or something. And you see, sometimes a picture of their brain. And if you go and visit them, it's up in their bedroom. The picture of the brain is there, or the mug is on the side. And I think what it does is it helps them realize the contribution they can make to research, because without they're willing to take part. And, and it's not easy. It's not easy at all. We wouldn't be able to do this. And it's really very moving when you meet and discuss these things with our participants.
Wonderful. I want to thank our panel before we move on to Q&A. So let's thank them for all their work they're doing. So if you have a question, we have mics so they can run. There's someone over there. We have Caroline and Jessica, so they will come to you.
Thank you. Good morning. Theresa, my question is for you, and it's possible that it's already been answered. But twice I've heard you this morning in your opening remarks in the first opening session and in this session, a word that I haven't heard spoken very often in the context of sort of cutting edge or future research. And that word was devices. I don't know if you had the VNS study in mind specifically, or if there's more to that. Particularly if there's more, I'm curious to hear about whatever there is possibly going on with therapeutic interventions through devices.
Yeah, so one of the great talks that we heard in the past 2 days was from Laura Hulson, who is up at Harvard, and she's investigating a different device, actually. So VNS, obviously we're a little biased about that on this stage, but so we like that. But transcranial magnetic stimulation is another device, and she works with a group at University of Pennsylvania, and they have actually identified a different, so you hear hypothalamus, 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 right? But they've identified a different part of the brain in the cerebellum that they think is really important in satiation. And they have a great paper in Nature, which is a big deal in the science field, from about a year and a half ago, just really defining that pathway, the cerebellum to satiation. So she has funding from FPWR to do a small study looking at transcranial magnetic stimulation, which allows stimulation of that specific area of the brain. And she's looking at its impact on hyperphagia. Now, it is a more intense trial because you have to go 5 days in a row. So you need to be local for at least the week because that's just the way the transcranial magnetic stimulation is done. But she's, halfway through that. She is still recruiting participants. So I'm happy to give you more information about that. And yeah, I think there's probably other devices as well. There's a transcranial direct current stimulation that has been explored a little bit in PWS, but this idea of really defining the regions of the brain that behave differently in PWS and then using neuromodulation. Oh, and deep brain stimulation, that's the other thing that a group at University of Pennsylvania is interested in looking at and got really close to getting funded, but we hope that it will get funded in a future round. I don't know.
There's also a group in France that is looking at vagal nerve stimulation for cognition, and I think social issues as well. So, and I want to make a plug for Dr. Holson's study. Is it in Boston or Pennsylvania? It's outside of Boston. Okay. She needs more subjects, and it's very exciting area of research. So I really want her to get the study done. So if you're at all interested, think about it.
The brain was mentioned a lot, but there's also some very, very early data in mice that shooting ultrasound at the liver can affect certain anxiety-like behaviors. So that's the other one that comes to mind.
Yeah, I mean, also, I think devices, wearable devices that we, all have and things, I think we're going to see an explosion of how they might be used. It may be, for example, to monitor someone's health, whether it's mental health or physical health. I think there's so much change in technology. I think who knows how we can use it. I think it's for people like ourselves to keep an eye on technological developments and ask ourselves, is there value in those? Can we use them in a way to answer questions that we couldn't answer before, and or to inform a new mode of treatment?
You talked about technology. How about with AI? Has that been helpful for research, or is it too early to tell?
Well, ask us again in about a year. So we're funding a researcher, Rohit Singh at Duke University, who is an AI person, right? So he's not or has not been a PWS person up to this point, but he attended the conference. What you need is a lot of really robust data sets. And so I think in years earlier, we probably didn't have those robust data sets, but we now have those robust data sets. And maybe Marc can comment. We have it's called the MAGL2 Roundtable. MAGL2 is one of the genes in the PWS region, and we gather those individuals they just finished breakfast together. And I think there was a discussion about collaborating with Dr. Singh at Duke with the databases. But
I always say that with the exception of Theresa Strong, a person cannot keep all the data that has ever been collected throughout history in their brain at the same time. And so we need AI, and the more data you give it, what it can do is look for correlations between anything. And the more data you have, the stronger it gets at finding correlations between things that people would never have thought could be related. So it's a matter of getting it more data. And as Theresa said, we sort of just an hour ago came to the conclusion that we're at a critical mass of data. The group that I had breakfast with are among the most data productive people that we have. Transcriptomics, proteomics, ubiquitomics, metabolomics. They've measured everything that can possibly be measured in brain samples, mice, cells, you name it. And we decided now is the time. We're going to pool the data and do everything we can to analyze it as a large group, involving, of course, Rohit, our AI expert, and others that we're going to reach out to in the near future. So this is a big day, at least for me. I feel like it's a really big day. We made that decision.
Hello, I'm Vicky from Greece, and thank you all so much for your insight in the research universe. My question is if any of you has an educated guess about how long it's going to take for VICAT to get approved from EMA, because in Europe we have extra approvals to come after that for each country.
I can't comment. It's taken me this long to learn about the FDA, so I don't know if you want to hazard a guess, but it's probably...
I think we can say at least the process has started. Yeah. But it's going to be months, and I think because one of the big issues will be, if it is approved, is the funding of, the cost of the treatment. One of the strengths of the European Union, and of course, tragically, the UK is not part of the European Union any longer, is that if one country comes up with funding arrangements for VICAT once it's been approved, then there's an obligation on other countries within the EU to do the same, because there should be similarities across the country. So I think that it's going to take many months, but I think the biggest argument is going to be around cost. There'll be maybe experts here from Soleno who can say more about that. But again, one of the strengths of Europe is it is allowed to negotiate, I think, as an organization, if you like, whereas I know this is being a big issue in this country, that individual states or something or organizations have to negotiate the price individually, so you don't have the clout that maybe Europe has or the UK has through its National Health Service.
Great. We are actually out of time, but I'm sure that if you have a question, you can catch one of our team out after our session. All of the work that we have discussed and more is made possible from families like you, our volunteers, people who have decided to take action and help accelerate treatments for PWS. So thanks to all of you for helping with that support. And thank you to our panel again today. I know I learned so much about the research that's happening for PWS and Shaw-Yang syndrome today. We also want to thank all of our sponsors for making this conference possible.
I'm just going to give one more plug that I forgot. One of the resources that we're building for the PWS research community is a biobank, which is blood samples from individuals with PWS. We have a team here that can take a blood sample, and if you would be willing, or your loved one with PWS would be willing to donate a sample, we can help you arrange that. That's combined brain. You may be getting alerts about it as well, but will be a great resource for the research community to better understand PWS.